As Dean of Religious and Spiritual Life at the University of Southern California, I essentially serve as the university's chaplain. And in that role, I oversee more than 90 student religious groups on our campus, more than 60 campus chaplains representing every faith tradition in the world. We even have a humanist chaplain for atheists and agnostic students. Only in LA, I think. And in that role, and through my confidential work of pastoral care and spiritual counseling, I see the shadow and the light that animates a university student's experiences, that might animate your own experience right here. Every fall at USC, I see students from all over the world, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, excited to come to campus to live their dreams. Indeed, for many of my students, just like for many of you, arriving on campus represents the culmination of a very long journey of hard work and sacrifice. And so when they get to campus, they are hopeful and optimistic and ready for the adventure of a lifetime. But when the reality of college sets in, it's not all fun and games, as you know. It's not easy to be away from home for the first time. It's not easy to make new friends and build new communities. It's not easy to figure out a major and a course of study. It can be overwhelming to think about what you might want to do for the rest of your life. And for the first time in your life, you might not be the only valedictorian in your class, or the most accomplished musician, or the highest achieving athlete. You might not get the grades that you are accustomed to getting. You might not get the job that you desire. You might not get the graduate school admission of your choice. And I know about this next one in excruciating firsthand detail, as it is the story of my life. You might not have your romantic feelings towards someone else reciprocated. It's true. Believe it or not, it happened to me. I'm still working on my wife of 13 years to get that reciprocation. This is all part, though, of a normal college experience. This is what it means to be in college. And what no one tells you is that your normal college experience is inherently a traumatic experience. It's true. It's inspiring. It's transformative. It's enlightening. It's a lot of fun. But it's also traumatic. It's not something we advertise to bring you to campus. Come to our school to experience world-class teaching and trauma. But if you're going through these challenges and feeling these emotions, I want you to know that if you have a little trauma in your life as a college student, you're doing something right. You're not doing anything wrong. I wish someone had told me that when I got to college, because my own journey to college was a difficult one. I often felt lonely and marginalized, unseen and unheard. I grew up Hindu at a time in the United States when there weren't a lot of Hindus in the public sphere. When there weren't, we had Deepak Chopra and we had Apu from The Simpsons, and that was about it. Those were our only role models. I used to think Apu was a terrible stereotype, but I have a cousin named Apu and another cousin who runs a supermarket, so I'd have no leg to stand on there anymore. And so I struggled to understand what it meant to be Hindu, what it meant to be Indian, what it meant to be an immigrant, what it meant to be a religious and ethnic minority in the United States. I also went to a Catholic school growing up where I was taught that idolatry is a sin. And I would return home to my Hindu household with images and statues of all sorts of gods and goddesses. And that only compounded my confusion and sense of dislocation. So when I was in college, I decided to take a course on Asian religions to learn more about my ancestry. And I'm not going to lie, to also fulfill a GE requirement. Ironically, that's the reason most of my students take my course now. And I'm also an easy A. But what I didn't anticipate was that this class would change my life and inspire me to spend a semester living abroad in India, living in a small town where the Buddha was enlightened, in a monastery where I took the vows of a Theravada monk, studied Buddhist philosophy and many different meditation traditions. And at that time, I became enamored with the life story of the Buddha, in part because it felt similar to my life story. The Buddha was born a prince. I wasn't born a prince, but the Buddha was born a prince, but left his palace in order to find a way out of the human condition of suffering. And at that time, I was leaving the comfort of my parents' home as a college student and had set out on my own spiritual journey to discover my own true nature. In many ways, the Buddha's life story is like your story too, as you leave home and come to college to begin your own journey of self-discovery. When the Buddha achieved enlightenment, he articulated the Four Noble Truths, which is the foundational doctrine for Buddhists. And that first noble truth really has stuck with me. It's life is suffering. Life is suffering. That doesn't mean that all life is suffering. And that doesn't mean that life is only suffering, but it does mean that to live is to suffer. And one of the things that connects all of us here with everyone who has ever lived is that we have suffered. And another thing that connects us with everyone around the world is that we all wish to be free from that suffering. So this is a fundamental human condition, that to live is to suffer. And the Buddha talked about two kinds of suffering. There was the material suffering, which is the suffering of not having resources, not having shelter, food, air, sustenance, water, not having the material possessions you need in order to thrive. But he also talked about another kind of suffering, mental suffering, not the suffering that's happening in the world out here, but the suffering that's happening in our own minds. And what he said is that we can mitigate our own suffering. We can lessen our own suffering through the way we look at the world. We can't always control the world out there. I can't always get people to do what I want. I can't always get the election to go one way or the other. I can't always make the money I want or get the job I want or get the, whatever I'm looking for, the girl or guy to like me back, right? I can't always do that. But I don't have control always in the external world, but I have control in the internal world. I can control my perception of that world. So we can't control everything, but the things we can control are the most important things in terms of your own happiness and well-being. They may seem trite, may seem cheesy, but the things you can control are powerful beyond measure. What can you control? Well, you can control your beliefs, your attitude, your thoughts, your perspectives. You can control your values. You can control how honest you are, who your friends are, what books you read. You can control how often you exercise, what you eat, how you interpret the world. You can control how many risks you take, how kind you are, how grateful you are, how much effort you exert. You can control how much time you spend worrying, how much time you spend judging or not judging others. You can control how many times you say, I love you. These are the most important things in your life, not your salary, your degree, your celebrity, your status, or your material possessions. This is what science tells us. This is what spirituality tells us. And you all have the power to cultivate the positive mindset to control these things. And you should never let anyone or anything take that power away from you.